All right, let's jump into some altcoins today. We'll take a look at Bitcoin. We'll also take a look at some sentiment today for you guys. And also kind of look at maybe what's happening within the Solana ecosystem. This might be a good run-up for maybe some altcoin season. Is there something brewing here? We'll break all that down for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to the Tech Path. Joining me today, of course, is Mr. Evan Aldo on the Altcoin Show.
It was great to be on.
Back in, and we're going to cook it up today. Before we get going, though, let's, of course, thank our sponsor, and that is Ledger. They have a good deal going on right now. And that is, if you buy a Ledger Nano, you can get up to $30 in Bitcoin. So this is only until April 18th. So might be a good deal. It's basically, if you go the Nano X route, you're going to spend like $150. So you get the $30 off, or essentially in Bitcoin. So really, that's just more investment for you that's going to run up and end up probably paying for your Ledger in the long run. Check it out. Make sure and use our link down below. It does help the channel out. If you're thinking about self-custody, this is the route I would take. All right, so let's get into a couple of news stories. One news story is Bitcoin. I want to just hit on a few things here. Bitcoin, Ethereum, technical analysis. Bitcoin moves above 28.5, ETH obviously nearing the 2K number. And if you've been following us on the CPI, we've been reporting on ETH over the past few days, actually, that we saw some pretty significant moves on sentiment. That was when ETH was running in the 17s. Obviously, we've seen the move up to 19. So a couple of things have moved here. Bitcoin climbed to the ceiling of 28.5, 4-day high. So that's pretty decent there. A couple of other things here is it appears that the move occurred once the relative strength, which is the RSI, bounced a little bit. We'll talk about that with Evan. Additional scenarios around there is whether or not Bitcoin can move above the 29K mark. We're going to find out from Evan if that might work. And whether or not you guys think that ETH is going to get strong enough to crack the 2K mark. I'd love to get your opinion on that. Make sure and smash the like button on that. I know we got a lot of people that trade ETH. But before we get into ETH, let's take a look at Bitcoin right now. And with where Bitcoin is, Evan, is it in enough of a position right now in terms of dominance to be able to pull through, or do you think we're going to see it bleed a little bit to some alts?
You know, what happens here a lot of times when we look at Bitcoin dominance, let me show you Bitcoin dominance real quick first, because it's hitting such a big point right here. And this is around the 47% point right here. Big rejection there, big rejection there. You know, 1, 2, 3 times it rejected. Here's the 4th time. I think at least you would probably come down a little bit here, and you could allow ETH to keep outperforming it, at least in the short term. But I do think inevitably, after all this is said and done, which is probably going to be within the next month, this will continue higher. Now, I drew out 2 things here that you can see on the monthly. One course is that we just kind of push through this. The monthly with the money flow coming up would support this. If Bitcoin, pushes through this, most likely we'd see a significant pullback in the market. If we have a drop down a bit, maybe back to 46, 45, then continue forward, that's where some altcoins could have a nice few weeks ahead, and then you may see kind of a more of a sell and may walk away. Right now, if you look at the weekly here, this is very similar to kind of what we saw back in 2019. It's the big question is, can we push forward like this? If you do something like that, you could potentially, if you look up here, push forward maybe up to 42K. I'm more in the boat that you would kind of be more sideways for Bitcoin in the next few weeks, and then let more money kind of come into ETH a little bit more to push ETH up a little bit more here.
So you're feeling a little bit more bullish on ETH, sideways on Bitcoin a little bit?
For the next 2 weeks,
Interesting. Okay.
For not too long, though.
We're going to take a look at, actually, let's go over and look at that now. Let me pull it up real quick. I'll pull up, let's go back out to Bitcoin. All right, so let's go in and take a look at sentiment. I would agree. I mean, we're seeing a little bit of sideways action, and not necessarily a bad action in terms of overall sentiment, because the amplification sentiment is not necessarily separating away. It's still performing above market, so I'm still consistent with where you're kind of going, Bitcoin on a little bit of a sideways track for right now. There are some things, though, that could play into this. I wanted to jump over to this tweet right here. And this is a good example of where the markets are right now. Markets rally on weak economic data because it means rate cuts are coming. Then strong economic data sends markets lower because it means higher rates for longer. And then markets hope for recession to get a Fed pivot, and then
in the last 2 days that hasn't been true, because we're seeing traditional markets kind of come down as you're getting news of worse employment rates. So bad news is now bad news, regardless of whether or not the Fed is going to keep raising.
Well, bad news for current markets as it is. But the real question will be, if the bad news continues, does it mean a Fed pivot, which is positive? for markets. Well,
Generally, but you generally see the bottoms
after
the
the
for traditional
pivots,
markets,
yeah.
not necessarily gold, silver, or Bitcoin, but for traditional.
Well, and that'll be the question mark, is whether or
Yeah.
not we'll see risk assets start to basically hedge against the markets
Right.
during that period of time, which is pretty typical of what goes on.
Yeah.
A couple of things here on ETH. Let me jump to a couple of notes here. This is a massive vote of confidence for Ethereum. This also could set up the precedence for cryptocurrency business and financial institutions to use ETH as a settlement layer. This would be a pretty big and significant move if we saw more of that. Now remember, we've been testing Fidelity. Personally, I've been testing Fidelity. So far, I've been fairly impressed with what they've done, and I think we'll continue to see some advancements there. Again, with Fidelity, that is where they hold your Bitcoin. They're using kind of this governed wallet that controls all the Bitcoin that is a little bit unique. Go back and check our Fidelity video out. It breaks down the how to, why, and what that might mean. But if we get into ETH settlement layers, that could be some pretty interesting aspects to it. Further into what they were saying is the bullish setup versus Bitcoin is apparent, and both Bitcoin and ETH have consolidated a little bit over the week, and broader crypto markets continue to enjoy this bullish spell. Do you think this is a long-term play on whether or not we'll continue to see a bullish moves right now?
You know, I think ultimately, I mean, some people may not like this, but I think a lot of the bullish move is kind of over per se. And if you look at kind of my chart here on ETH, I just want to show you this right here. You know, I think that ETH, if we do see more of an altcoin seasons are quick. And if you look right here, what happened, look at this blue triangle, which is a trend reversal sign here. This was 2019. And a lot of this market in 2023 has looked similar to 2019. You came up higher than this. You came up a bit higher than this, as you can see. Maybe ETH could come up to, 2,100 or something over the next 2 weeks. But then I think you're going to see kind of a summer lull coming down.
Yeah.
Maybe not as bad as that, but I think ultimately where I'm looking at to DCA into ETH for long term here is what I'm hoping for is when this crosses into the red, similar to this area, for a nice period, maybe hopefully between May or June. Maybe it's a sell and May walk away type thing. After you get that dump in May, June, then from there all the way until January, February of kind of 2024, I think ultimately, historically, the best places to DCA into Bitcoin, ETH, into crypto for long term are about 8 to 10 month periods. So I think we're just getting there with ETH. I don't think you're really going to miss the boat unless, not financial advice, but unless you wait until more than kind of February or March of 2024. There's still time.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, that's something that right now we've been playing with is the balance of the portfolio in terms of load balancing how you invest, and whether it's altcoins, Bitcoin, ETH, some of the things. Now we've been playing that altcoin market in the early year. We had a little bit of investment going on in our crypto portfolio there that we did in our 2023. We've adjusted a lot of stuff out of that. We're probably going to do another update on that now that we're in Q2. With that being the case, Matic moved out. I know a lot of people don't like it that we exited Matic, but the point is that it was great profits. I mean, you have to take the benefits.
Nothing goes up forever.
Yeah, take
Nothing
the
goes
benefits
up
and move
forever.
on.
Yeah.
Maybe we see Matic come back down into another potential. Same thing's kind of happening with Solana, which I want to jump to the Solana chart real quick. Solana, and I'll jump back to Bitcoin because there's an interesting statement here in a second, but when you look at Solana, there's a few things that are starting to play into this. One is the move of both Render and Helium, which are migrations.
Okay.
Those most likely will have some impact. What do the charts look like for Solana? Because right now it's not necessarily responding to the market.
Yeah, Solana, ultimately in an altcoin season, Solana is not something I would be. If I was going to be betting on something for an altcoin season, Solana is not there. I mean, we're just looking at this general kind of, the last time we had kind of a red X, a bearish continuation kind of pattern here in Solana was back in January 22. I'm not saying it's going to go down this much, but RSIs are kind of split apart here coming down. There are so many other altcoins that look a lot better than Solana right now. And I mean, you also had this giant, 200% gain here. You didn't see that for something like Polkadot, for something like Cardano either. So
right.
I mean, I think there's a lot more opportunity in other things. But if you look here, I mean, if you do see that potential altcoin season, you do have a trigger wave right here. There is some, possibility of coming up higher, but we really want to see a break above kind of the February highs at around $26 here. It looks pretty weak that we're not even close to that. You know what I mean? Given how good Bitcoin has done, how good Ethereum has done in the past month. So it's really lagging behind those. And I think there's just many opportunities with other altcoins that would have better odds of having a rally forward in the next month as opposed to Solana.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember that Solana is, I was just looking at the move here, that's still 125% gain from its December low, end of December, actually right at the end of the month of December. We had Warren on when Solana was sweeping that $8 mark. And, you know, he was even, his point was that he felt like that was going to be it. That's our window right there. And if you were to play that, you'd be in some pretty good position right now. The question is whether or not you will play the Solana the token on more of a long-term basis like you would an ETH. That's the real question here, because this could be one of the altcoin winners for this season. Again, maybe not to the point you're talking about, which is the game we saw last time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's better opportunities for long-term and things with a bit lower market caps, you know, such as Chainlink. I think there's just more opportunity for things to just outperform it into the next bull run.
That's
my opinion.
That's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily remember, is that these cycles, when you get these strong tokens, they get that community behind them. But in most cases, and this is something that many of the aggressive traders do and the high-risk traders do. And remember, sometimes when you do degen in these bull cycles, those are the opportunities of getting this 100x type gains. Those types of projects, much like the ones you've talked about, there are a handful of those out there that may play out. Whether or not you want to play it safe, and Solana could be a nice little, 5x, 4x, something of that nature. But I think
it's nothing
going to be
for crypto.
Well, and the cool thing with Solana is it's a solid project, and they continue to do a lot of things. Just to look at a rundown here. All right, so this thing is right now still very, very popular. Okay, 100% since Q1, which we just showed. This thing is also trading at $20 right now, $21, 8.2 billion. It's the 11th largest cryptocurrency right now. You look at this right here. This is a big deal. This is launching here on the 13th, which is the Saga phone. And they're doing a launch event on this. So that I think will also gain some traction, even though I'm very bullish on what we may see on the ETH operating system. We talked about that the other day on the show, and what that might mean for developers out there, because an ETH OS would be very interesting. Helium also starts its transition, 13 days away from the mainnet launch on Solana. So you've got Helium. Now, granted, Helium is absolutely in the toilet right now. Let's take a look at the Helium chart. It's not looking good right now. I think it's at its all-time low, or is continuing its all-time low.
The main thing here, I guess, the main bullish case would be kind of the bubble pop pattern, where you just wait till you get into where the thing price was before you even had anything, before anyone even knew what this was, which we're kind of there and getting a bounce off of it. Oh man, I'm not seeing too many good things on the weekly. I mean, maybe if you could get a bullish div, if this comes up, you get a nice bullish div here. However, that could take a while. We may not see that until, let's kind of estimate when you may see that. You may not see that until another end of the month into May, potentially here. So, yeah, and you're just not seeing much. It would be a risky play. Maybe the next, green dot here. I'd be waiting for those things right now. I'd probably stay away from this. I mean, ultimately, the thing is you want to look for 4 to 5 ELXs and then some sell exhaustion. You saw it here, but it doesn't really amount to much. You saw it now. You saw this big pump up, but that's all gone. You know what I mean? If you got into Solana instead, you'd be way up from that low. Here, you're all the way back down. So there's a lot of concerns here. I'm not going to say this is going to go to zero, but it's one of them that can. You know what I mean? It's one of them that can. So,
well, any of these projects that are kind of on the ridge right now could go to zero, which is something you should always be aware of, guys. A lot of these projects, these are super high risk, and in many cases, especially some of these altcoin tokens. But if you look at Helium, the thing that I'm watching right now is sentiment, because I feel like with the migration, what they may get out of that, their relationship to Solana, the potential for mobile because of their partnership with T-Mobile. There are some fundamentals there that could pull them out of the doldrums, and they might see a little bit of a run. Kind of like what has happened with Render. Just a couple of stories here. Render rose 8%. The community votes on proposed Solana migration finally coming in. So that in itself is pretty good. And a couple of things here. Token right now trading at $1.37. This was still, but it has increased almost 15% in the last 7 days. So last week, not a bad move for Render. We were pretty active on render. We've been staying away from it for a while, primarily because of the sentiment data that was starting to decline. What does this look like in terms of a short term for render?
Yeah, this is a little bit neutral, I would say, on this chart. Kind of, it's a little bit hard to say. I mean, if you're looking at the 3-day, you had this trigger wave, which kind of gave you the little jump up here. However, you got to look at like kind of what happened back in December. You had the trigger wave, and then you just made kind of another low right there. You also came up a lot with this. I would ultimately just view this as the way I would play this as more of a kind of a venture capitalist perspective. I'm waiting a few months for Bitcoin dominance to go above 50%. And then putting small amounts of money into a bunch of tokens kind of at this market cap with good fundamentals. That's the best way I would play this right now. In terms of the short term, if we do see kind of an altcoin season, Bitcoin dominance comes down a bit, you see the money flow coming up right here in the 12-hour. It's not, I highly doubt it's going to be this big of a jump up, but you might be able to see like something like this potentially. Let's see what that was. 100%, that's even too high. I don't think it's going to go that high, but yeah, I mean, they do get very volatile. Maybe you could have a double top with a 230 potentially. This is a tough one, the highly volatile, highly skeptical, highly skeptical at this point. So,
well, render's one of those projects too that is a long-term play
of
how it will be used in Web3. More Web3 adoption, more render requirements in terms of decentralized computing power. That in itself, I think, is the long-term play on this. So it is and could be more of one of those long-term holds. It might want to be one of these where you buy it and kind of pocket it away in a ledger and just forget it's there.
DCA,
kind of
I would plan like once Bitcoin dominance gets above 50% in a few months, DCA into this for kind of a nice period and hold for a couple of years.
Yeah, and just let it ride. All right, a couple of things here that are interesting. ETH is one of the charts we have been following along for quite some time. These have been our sentiment triggers that we've identified, the one back here in early March, the one that we picked up in March 11th, and then just this week, we picked up another trend bubble there that was identified in our CPI. This is one of the things that starts to get me in and active again when we start to see big movement on something like that. Not necessarily because obviously Shanghai is just here a few days away. Not that that is the one reason, but I feel like what's happening with ETH is the fundamental component is now starting to set in for long-term investors. So whether that is going to be institutional capital or maybe, whales and others that are out there starting to play the ETH parade, much like me, I'm not saying that I'm a whale, but much like us, we've kind of shifted ETH up pretty significantly in the portfolio to where it's now competing with Bitcoin. And that's a rarity for at least our portfolio. ETH has not been in that position for a while.
Yeah, I'm still a little patient on it. I'm still going to give it a few more months. I think the summer accumulation, like I was talking about, I just want to trust my charts a lot with just that 12-day going into the red, that summer accumulation. I just don't think you're going to miss the boat yet. I just really don't think. I could be wrong, but I just think ultimately my DCA period is probably going to hopefully be between June and February of next year for long term. And that's maybe if I want to invest 10 grand into it, put $1,000 in every month. That's kind of my main strategy for ETH. And if you look at ETH, I just wanted to show you the chart right here. I mean, we are bumping into a lot of things. We're not necessarily going to see kind of that altcoin season. We may not. We may, but we may not. And you're hitting this big point right here around 1942. That's a big spiral line right there. I mean, you do have some things that you're starting to see where kind of the 2-day you're about to get, that VWAP could come down at any point. You're about to get somewhat of a pretty big bearish div there. So there are signs you can reject from this point. If you do continue forward, it could be a big kind of altcoin season, quick jump up to like 23, 24, and then right back down. We know that volatility, so be careful.
Be aware for sure. Lots happening out there. I want to jump over to this tweet from Ultra. Ready to experience play like never before. We've covered Ultra before. They've made it in and out of the CPI a couple of times, but they are launching Ultra Games on the 25th of April. Basically, it is the Steam kind of concept for Web3. The cool thing here that they are doing that is a bit different is they're actually launching regular Web2 games within this platform. And the cool aspect around it is you'll be able to actually trade and sell games.
Okay.
This is like the digital or the Web3 version of GameStop. I mean, that in itself might showcase some potential growth and potentially start to draw in a lot of studios, which is because you get value in your games start to grow, you get that kind of that viral effect. What does Ultra look like in terms of chart?
It looks better. I think if we do have an altcoin season, this will be one that could ride up a bit. I mean, this looks better than a lot of other things I've looked at lately. And if you look at here, you get a little trigger wave here on the 5-day, which is pretty good. I mean, it might not necessarily bring you up that high, but in the next 2 weeks or so here, if we compare it to maybe this one or this one, you could see a bit more of a jump here, potentially coming up to maybe you could get a double top, maybe 40 cents or more here, potentially. That's what I'm looking at. But ultimately, I think the best time to get into a lot of these alts is going to be a few months, especially if we get a summer lull. And it still wouldn't surprise me. Say you come up a little bit in the next few weeks, it still wouldn't surprise me if we do something, roll over, and then finally get a lower low into middle to later this year. That's going to be the huge accumulation phase if you can come down a bit further. But for the short term, it definitely doesn't look too bad right now. I mean, you just got a big pump right there. 16 hours crossing into the green right there. It would probably be like this with just a lot of diminished returns. I mean, this was a 59% increase. Maybe you could guess here, I mean, maybe a 30%, maybe half of that would bring you right up to 40 cents. So I think that is possible if you do see somewhat of an altcoin season in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Evan, I want to jump back to Bitcoin for a second because there is a contrarian viewpoint on where Bitcoin is right now. And one of them is kind of focusing in on whether or not we'll see Bitcoin take a swoop back into the 20K mark. So right now, holding it a really solid 28. And you've got a couple of analysts out there that are pushing against this. So you've got a little bit of analysis here that says whether we see this push from 30 or not, it's only a matter of time before Bitcoin sweeps into the 20K low. And this is this is Justin Bennett over here. He's got a little bit of following there. But I mean, there's a lot of analysts now that are playing the contrarian position on Bitcoin. Based on sentiment data, I just haven't seen anything that indicates that kind of move. I mean, recently, over the last 60 days, 60-day sentiment has been very bullish. Granted, dominance has been very strong.
Right.
What about money flow, the potential of just the macro economy, possibly a slowing of the Fed? I mean, I feel just Bitcoin's going to hold above that 25.
It's hard to say, it's a little bit hard to say. Bitcoin does what I want to show you guys let's go on more of the lower time frames here. Bitcoin double blood diamond is kind of the 16 hour. There is a trigger wave coming down here, and Bitcoin does look more bearish than quite a few of the altcoins we looked at, which kind of makes me think we'll be sideways for a little bit while some of those alts run a little bit. But then after that, it's going to be more of a sell and may walk away. Now, this is a pretty rare bearish sign here. This is a pretty rare bearish div that's printing now on the 4-day. This is coming down. That could easily bring you down to 25. Now, 25 is a big area. This pocket, as you can see right here, this is the 200 weekly moving average as well. It coincides with the spiral lines. If you lose that, I think you ultimately will go back down to 20K. And that's even where, if you go back down to 20K, that's where you get into the cases towards the end of the year to make a low at like 15, make even a lower low, 15, 13K, where a lot of things really bleed and you get that curveball, which is kind of just proves we're not there yet for Bitcoin to act as gold and silver during kind of that recession. So that's what we got to be concerned about there. I think ultimately you will probably see a summer low. Will it go below 20K or go below 25K? Hard to say. Yeah. But I think you will most likely get another opportunity at lower prices towards the end of the year.
Keep an eye right now on Sailor. You've got Sailor. MicroStrategy acquired an additional 1,000 Bitcoin just this week, 29.3 million. Average price 28K. This would be 4.4, as of 4.4 right now, he's got 140,000 Bitcoin acquired for 4.17 billion, average price of 29K. So he's approaching his average price. Now, a lot of people might look at this and say, maybe there's an opportunity here for him to liquidate a little bit, ease his position. He's actually, I think, even been on record a couple times where he's been interested in ETH. I haven't seen him make an ETH purchase, but I'm kind of curious if he would go against that. Grain. That would definitely
that would be very interesting if he did that. I mean, kind of from my memories, usually when you see all those Twitter posts of Michael Saylor like buying, usually it's not a good sign.
Not a good sign.
Right? I remember at 60K they were about they're buying. I wonder why he wasn't able to buy at 16K. I don't think he bought. He had it up at 20K, but he wasn't able to buy it the real low.
But I want to flip up the show a little bit here and think about if we are nearing a potential altcoin season, even if it's just a mini altcoin season.
Yeah.
What would it be like to, and maybe this is just kind of a framework, because I know you're looking at tokens. I'm looking at tokens right now that could play into this. If you had to build an altcoin bag right now, if we do see a little bit of bleed from dominance, we see a little bit more pressure from the macro side of things, and we see ETH playing this out, what would that look like today if you looked at the charts right now? So I'm going to say, let's take a look at Avalanche. All right, you've got Avalanche going sideways here, quite a while, really, after it dipped into that low. And you think about that low that was where it was just a few weeks ago, was right there. And let's set that in at what was around $10. That was on January 1st. And there was your explosion. We had Avalanche a couple of times in and out. You had a 98% move. Then if you held it on out, you had a 93%. And even if you were here today, you'd be at 64%. So would Avalanche be in an altcoin bag for you?
Yeah, so it depends how much risk you want to take. The higher the market caps, the less risk. I mean, I think Avalanche is one of them that could pump up a good amount here. Ones that look like they kind of already had their bubble pop and are getting trigger waves of money flow coming up on the 3-day, that potentially could bring you up a little bit more. Now, I'm not sure if you could get above 23 here, but it's still a pretty good jump up, even if you just get up to 23 and then by the end of May or something, and then come down. AVAX is one that looks pretty good. Polkadot too. Let me just show you real quick. The Polkadot chart looks similar. Double trigger waves right there. And then as you get into lower market caps like Ultra, we looked at, that's where it's going to get riskier, but you could potentially get bigger jumps up. Polkadot right here could. I could see $8 potentially. I mean, we got to see if we could break through this February high of 7 something. But I think it's only going to last that altcoin season. I think at best case scenario, it's going to be kind of a mini altcoin season, and it's only really going to last 2 to 4 weeks. Really, probably only 2 weeks.
Would you be looking at Matic right now to hold through a bear market?
So my main strategy with Matic, just because it looks so bad compared to Bitcoin, and it's the one that no one has stopped talking about for so long. And I think it's going to kind of be done here. If you look at, this huge place we hit here, I would be waiting to get into Matic. Also, I'm going to sound more degenerate here, but Matic has a high enough market cap where you're just not going to see those crazy gains. I'd rather put money into Cosmos, Chainlink, lower market caps with probably just as good fundamentals. Almost.
Let's take a look at Atom right there. You've got Atom really right now in a pretty good position. This is another token I'm looking at. Even if you go back into the end of the year, first of the year, I should say, trading at $9.70, just a little bit above that. So it's almost retraced in its entirety, at least on year to date. And if you look at cycles around this and compare this, there's some good fundamentals behind Atom and what Cosmos is doing. We've had the team from Cosmos on the show. If you haven't learned about Cosmos, I would just recommend that you go take a look at that video. But what do you like in the charts for Atom?
So right now, it does look on the 12-day and the higher one. This doesn't look too good. Trigger wave to the downside. I mean, if you get an altcoin season, this could potentially pump up 13 and 14. But I do think that you're going to see some type of summer lull, and then that's the time to really get in. If you could form a double bottom kind of here from the summer and then onward. But, for kind of the short term here, if you look at this, it looks a little bit worse than those other ones. So I probably wouldn't, for the next 2 weeks, I probably would pass on this, but for long term, I think there is a lot of potential getting into this from the summer, from a DCA in, from a 10-month period, from like June, July, all the way until maybe March of next year. That's potential. I think this could hit like $100 or more in the next bull run.
Holy moly, we got a 10x looking.
You could get a 10x.
That's a nice little run if we get one of those. So this again would be one of those, again, not financial advice, but these are the kind of things that we're looking at, in terms of risk assets, because we know these are degen moves in many of these cases. There are cycles here within crypto during these little bull market runs, whether it's a fake bull market or if we have a full-on bull market coming at us. These are the kind of tokens that we're looking for. Now, there's some other ones out there. If you look at Conflux, this is one that we've kind of talked about here recently.
Risky.
Very risky. Where do you like and what do you like about Conflux right now? Let me pull up my chart. You can kind of see the numbers right here. And this thing has exploded back here from the middle of February.
Oh, wow.
And it absolutely just went stellar. Up to 38 cents now. Whether all the juice is wrung out of this one or there's some potential. Remember, this is the token that is tied to the People's Republic of China. And there are some aspects to this that may actually show some strength, but at the same time, it's a risky one. So what do you think, Evan?
So I think it could come up a little bit more potentially if we do see an altcoin season. There's a big point around 53 cents. It's a big psychological area. I think in the most bullish circumstances, maybe you could see 70 cents. This is a degen play though at this point because it's been up so much. See a little trigger wave there. I mean, that could potentially bring you higher, but obviously, a lot of this move is probably done. You probably want to take more of a venture capitalist approach on this, wait a few months and DCA in, or not financial advice, just kind of what I think. Ultimately, I think this is a good mark of when rally is probably going to be over is when the daily comes into the red here. That could take longer than many, maybe you could go like that and then not come into the red until another 2 or 3 weeks here. But I think a lot of this move is probably over.
Stacks was one of my buys this year that we got into. We did okay with it. It ran from February right up here to the top. Let's go to the candle there. And that went up to $1.20. It's retraced a little bit down here to 85 cents. Again, I think this obviously because it's so tied to the ordinals and where Bitcoin is sideways action and some downward trend right now are pressuring Stacks right now. Sentiment has also fallen on this one a little bit.
This looks a lot worse than a lot of the other altcoins we looked at.
You take a look at that one, then you flip over to XCAD. XCAD was another one that we bet on back in February. It also had a big top. What was that number there? Let's take a look at where we came back in February. And its top was at 63%. It has also retraced down, but some people are still looking at XCAD along with Veracity, both those kinds of tokens as potential. Again, whether or not these will be tokens that play out in the next market is a question mark. I would love to get you guys' opinion on something, and that is drop some questions over the sidebar or drop some comments down below if you're after the live show here. What kind of tokens are you looking for this next bull run? Because maybe those are some that we could do some research on for you and dive a little deeper, maybe even on sentiment that we don't have in the CPI right now. I'd love to get your feedback on all that good stuff. I know we got some questions coming in, and I know we have a poll, so let's take a look at the poll. Here we go. What will happen first? ETH to 2,000, 58%. Wow, the faith on Bitcoin going to 30 is down to 28. Everybody's on ETH right now.
They're thinking Bitcoin will be sideways at these, and then some more money will go into ETH, and we're real close to 2,000. That's a tough poll. That's a tough question to answer.
I like the ETH to 2K versus the Bitcoin to 30, only because of the things that we've been reporting on in terms of sentiment. And that is, right there is the ETH. It is now at an all-time high recently this year at 65 on the top, and on the AMP 64.55. This thing could intersect here, and if that happens, this will be interesting. That'll be something that shows ETH above it. Here's where Bitcoin started going flat back in the end of March, 329 right there. We had hit that 28 a couple of times, blipped in it, and then sideways we went, and a little bit of separation right here. So if you look at those two charts right there, you can kind of see them. There's the ETH trend line, and the Bitcoin trend line is, again, flat. So I would agree with you guys on that one. Let's take a look at some questions. I'm sure a lot of people have some. What do we have?
Let's see. That's an interesting one. What about CRO in the long run?
Crow, hey, okay.
No, not a fan.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. Yeah, I'm not a fan either. Those exchange tokens, I've kind of given up a lot of hope on.
That's a no play.
Let's see. Tether. Well, Tether. Somebody's asking. Don't ask me ask me about Tether. Obviously, it's going to 30 cents. How do you feel about Tether, Paul?
Well, listen. I think if Tether crashes, we are in deep doo-doo with crypto in general. The liquidity that it provides to the market is significant. Now, can and will there be some fallout from what's going on with Binance? Highly Tether connected. I mean, globally, I don't think it's going to move. I think Tether is going to be one of those that sticks around for a while. Right. The one that may end up being interesting is USDC may get back into the limelight again, which will be interesting. I don't know. Which stablecoin do you guys use when you have to use a stablecoin? Like if you're moving in between exchanges or something like that? Not sure. It's rare that I'm using stablecoins anymore. With the way Bitcoin is running, I almost flip anything into Bitcoin and then I'll move it and then sell it.
Right. Yeah.
And use it as a cash transfer. And just if I risk it and it's gone up by $100, $200, great.
Yeah.
versus sitting there playing with some of
I
these.
think if Tether does go down, we may see that, you go into the recession, regulatory FUD towards the end of the year. That's when you may see it. End of year, there could be a lot of uncertainty.
We got a couple of flamers coming in here with OMI.
OMI.
Big news with the VV community that happened this week. If you guys aren't following that, make sure and jump into our blog. And that's our Diamond Circle. So use the link down below. Kyle Wilson does a lot of breakdowns on Web3, and he does cover VV quite a bit. But there's a lot of things happening with VV, which is the Ecomi token support. HBAR, ooh, I loved this for a while. And here recently, there's been a little bit of challenge, but also no movement out of HBAR. And I think right now, we may see HBAR lose a lot to other altcoins.
It looks a lot worse than most of the altcoins we looked at today.
Its sentiment is not good right now.
This daily doesn't look too good. Yeah, this looks a lot. I would not mess with this right now.
Alpha says we are sleeping on Polygon.
There's always going to be. Polygon moved up so much. There's going to be opportunity with a lot other market caps.
Think of it this way, guys, and think of it like this. If you've got, let's just use $1,000. You've got $1,000, whatever you're going to invest in, business, real estate, crypto, gold, bonds, whatever it might be, you're going to go with the asset that you think will get you the most bang for the buck.
Right.
And I think when you've got the number of assets to choose from in altcoins right now, unfortunately, unless Polygon does something absolutely crazy, and I just don't see this with ZK and what's happening with ETH truly happening, I think, I'm not saying that it's a bad project, and we've talked about this before. I love Polygon as a company, and I think their vision is much grander. But Matic, the token, is the question mark. They're also asking about Gala.
Gala, we can look at that.
Do you like the Gala charts?
Let's see.
Now
Gala looks worse than a lot of things we've looked at, but it doesn't look as bad as HBAR. There are some little trigger waves right here. If we do see an altcoin season, I think this could mess around with 6 cents potentially.
Okay.
I don't know if I could see it going up much more than that.
That would be an interesting little bit of I mean, it did recover from that low, which a lot of people were looking at that death march. You can kind of see it right there on the chart. We'd love to get your input. As I said, we do this altcoin show weekly. Evan comes in the studio. We break it down. We kind of look at a lot of different charts here. Try to analyze against what's happening in sentiment. Hopefully you guys like this. If you do, all we ask is you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get, of course, this hopefully in your feed. And also hit that little bell because it's going to give you notifications of a live show just like what you just experienced here. And, of course, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, start and get in. It's really easy, and it's a great place to really kind of get engaged with us. Starts to lead you down the rabbit hole. If you're listening to us right now over on the podcast, you just missed a whole ton of charts. So just follow it on over here to YouTube. You'll be able to see everything that Evan and I broke down, and it's a great place to kind of get involved into the community. Of course, if you want to catch me, it's out there at Paul Barron on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.